Hi. Andijan, the city, the administrative center of the Andijan region of Uzbekistan, her economic and cultural center. One of the most ancient cities of the world, to Andijan more 2500. The archaeological objects dated the 7th and 8th centuries and were found in some parts of the city. Historically, Andijan took the important place on the Great Silk Way. This city is known as the birthplace of Babur, founder in India to the empire of great Mughals. Babur wrote in a world-famous Baburname that Andijan is the capital of the area of Fergana. Fortress in Andijan was one of three the largest in Central Asia. After Samarkand and Kasha, Chakrasibs. Andijan is the important industrial city of the country in which the set of industrial goods is made. Chemicals, household appliances, electronics, food, furniture, plows, pumps, footwear, spare parts for farm vehicles, various engineering tools and wheelchairs. Etymological interpretation of origin of the name of the city of Andijan is rich and contains not one national legend. Emergence of the city is connected with a name of the Turonian princess Andijan, the daughter of Afrosiab, the legendary governor ancient Turan. In search of healing opportunities, the seriously ill princess arrived in one of mountain valleys of the foothills of Takhti Sulaiman, where she managed to overcome the heavy chronic illnesses. In honor of her healing in this wonder-working valley with the exotic nature, Afrosiab constructed the loch for the princess and put an extensive garden. Since then, this area located in lower reaches of the mountain small river Oshse began to be called Andijan, and the city erected there subsequently was turned by Afrosiab into his majestic Turan's capital, the city of Andijan. Emergence of a toponym is directly connected with the Turkic-speaking people Adak Island, and Andi. The national rumor says that in the ancient time these territories were inhabited by the tribe of Andi, that is Hindus, and therefore the area began to be called Angukan, or a haven of Hindus. The name of the city is connected with a name of so-called pioneer of the edge which laid the foundation for a future city, called Andi. So, in honor of the ancient builder-architect, the city also received the name Andijan. The Russian historian 5. Milevkin believes that the toponym of Andijan appeared thanks to the name of the Turkic tribe of Andi. The matter is that till some time inhabitants of the neighboring regions often called the Andijan Uzbeks by the name of Andi, and claimed that Andi of one origin with those Turkic peoples who lived in the cities of Central Asia. According to 5. Bartold, Andijan was founded by the Mongolian Khans at the end of the 13th century. Here Turkic peoples from different tribes and childbirth were translated. At the end of the 15th century, Andijan was considered in Fergana as mainly Turkic city. In the southern part of the Caspian Sea there was a state Andia. Andi, the meeting place and Kurultay of Turkic tribes for the solution of friendly and important questions. Free translation of a phrase Kuda Anda, matchmakers sworn brothers. The toponym of Andijan can mean the settlement located on the riverbank, that is the blissful Nabareni city. At descriptions of Andijan Babur placed emphasis that the river of Andijan had areas in flow. Having passed through suburbs of the valley, flows into Andijan on 9 channels, and it is surprising, she doesn't leave then in one place. History. Andijan, one of the most ancient cities of the world. It is founded in the 4 centuries BB. Archaeologists established recently that the territory of the modern city is inhabited more 2500. In the 6th century BB, by the time of gain by Achaemenid troops of Central Asia, Andijan could keep independence that served the emergence of the state of Dawan with the capital in the city of Urshi. The suburb of Andijan. The beginning of the period of change of a bronze instrument of labor on iron, development of agriculture with artificial irrigation and cattle breeding, including cultivation of heavenly horses, served as the beginning of the military conflict between the state of Dawan and the Chinese Empire, in which China lost. Ancient Andijan settled down on crossing of caravan roads of the Great Silk Way. In the 4 centuries BB, in the state of Dawan, there was a development of potter's culture. In the I-3 centuries AD, a Latansky culture arose, arts developed, growth of the city was observed. In the 5th century AD, to the district of Andijan Kashevit Turkic-speaking tribes, there was a process of Turkization of indigenous people. Middle Ages. In the 9th century the Arab Caliphate broke up, the city was a part of the state of Samanidav and turned into one of the main centers of the Fergana Valley. In written sources since the 9th century it became known under the name Angukan. In the 10th century he appeared as a part of the Karakanidski state, and in the 13th century was captured by Mongols and was a part of the Chagatai Ulis. In the 14th century I became a part of the state of Timuridov when developed science, art and architecture. At the beginning of the 16th century I entered the state of Shaybanadav. Under the name Andijan it is mentioned as the state capital. In 1504 Shibanihan gave Axian and Andijan to the Shaibanidski Sultan of Chinibek Sultanu. In the middle of the 16th century Dahavanmard, Ali Sultan governed in Axian and Andijan. In the 16th century Andijan Shibanadami was one, later I was a part of the Kokand Khanate. Since 1876 the earth of the Kokand Khanate, including Andijan, was a part of the Russian Empire. At this time in the city made wonderful silk and cotton fabrics which were known not only in the Fergana Valley, but also in the distance beyond her limits. In 1902 Andijan suffered from the earthquake which destroyed a large number of ancient monuments. In October 1875 Andijan was occupied by troops of the General A. Trotsky. In January 1876 it was occupied by troops of the General M. Skobelev, and I was a part of the Russian Empire. In 1893-1898 in the Andijan County, and like other Turkestan, officially began to allocate lands for immigrants from the European part of the Russian Empire. Earlier informal immigrants to Turkestan were returned back home. That was connected with the high density of indigenous people and lack of free lands. Immigrants came to the Andijan County from various provinces of the Russian Empire. Kharkiv, Kiev, Poltava, areas of Army of Donskoy, Ekaterinoslavsky, Saratov, Samara, Voronezh, Tula, Astrakhan, Kursk, Stavropol, Orenburg, from Siberia, northern Russia and from the Caucasus. The national structure was quite uniform. It were mainly Russian as under the provision on management of the Turkestan region, the Russian citizens of Christian religion belonging to a condition of rural inhabitants were only allowed to resettlement. Almost all Russian settlements of Turkestan were arranged in northern, northeast and east foothills of the Andijan county. Lazakonsky, Minutinsky, Jalalabad, Kugart, Agensky, Yasinski, Berishsky Volosts. A net small amount of immigrants placed in Manyaksky and Kurbashsky Volosts of the Osh County, in which agricultural conditions approached habitual for the Russian and Ukrainian peasant, where it was possible to do without artificial irrigation. A large number of lands was marked out only in the suburb of Andijan. The Russian village, 280 yards, existed till 1974. Settlements Moska and Pokrovsk is formed. In them for the first time began to grow up in large volumes grain crops, which in the subsequent provided with wheat and grain the most part of inhabitants of the valley. Also local population learned at Russians' methods of the improved processing of the soil, that it promoted increase in a harvest, care of the cattle in winter time and to beekeeping. With the arrival of Russians at local population great demand, the Russian bread began to be. It led to the fact that began to reserve hay for the winter. Even Sarta mowed with it a lucerne. Local peasants began to use also a lemishny plough instead of an omok, and a stone skating rink for a threshing, and the Russian winners. In the Andijan county and further in Turkestan there were such cultures as potatoes, white and a cauliflower, tomatoes, sugar beet, oats. The attempt to enter fine fleece sheep breeding. In particular in the Andijan county K5. Solovyev, the pioneer of the Russian factory matter in Turkestan, was made. Near Andijan in Zelensk, now the city of Yusuk. The local population for the first time constructed a lock, an irrigational construction on the European sample, of a burned brick, on cement, with the concrete base and with iron boards. In general, Russians shared with local what were able to do. Also there was the return process. Russians studied at locals to irrigation, features of local gardening and wine growing. Integration and mutual respect between local population and immigrants. Frontlines, progressively adjusted intellectuals and workers from Europeans were almost always taught to local languages. It was connected not only and not just with the requirements arising at small ethnic groups in the ethno-nationalny environment. They were representatives of the ethnos dominating at present. How many with the deep respect which they had for indigenous people, for his culture and history. And such relation couldn't but affect growth of self-esteem at the local people of age that promoted emergence of the first sprouts of friendship between them, both Russian and other immigrants from the internal provinces of Russia. In May 1898 in Andijan there was a mutiny which became history as the Andijan revolt directed against the imperial authorities. An attempt to restore independence of Kokand was made. Ishini, it is more than somebody another the victim of the new power. Ishin was going to restore the Kokand Khanate, having become his sovereign governor who would be need trade revenues and Vakufni lands and also obedient citizens. Russians shook traditional foundations of Muslim society. The investigation also found that the elderly people serving at the Kokand Khan were the closest assistants to Anishin. They carried on propaganda in favor of a nation and hired soldiers of Islam. On May 17, 1898 in Andijan, over 1,500 people committed an assault on Russian military garrison. The local religious leader enjoying wide popularity, Magomed Ali Halif Muhammad Sabair Oglu, was at the head of a revolt. In abbreviated form, Madali. Already every other day Dukiashin was arrested, also his closest associates were one by one caught. From 2,000 participants of a mutiny, 777 people were arrested. News of a revolt failure quickly flew to the district and held from a performance of those someone were only going to attack Russians. However, despite arrest of the head of a mutiny, supporters of Andijan nevertheless killed the forest warden and robbed the camp of Cossacks. The attempt also ended with it to be exempted from incorrect. As a result, the Andijan revolt forced the authorities of the Russian Turkestan to come to need understanding to know moods and thoughts of local population better. Uzbeks are grades. In May 1899 in Andijan, the Samarkand-Andijan Railroad opened. First line connected the Ursativsk station to Andijan 1. The railway stations, Fedchenko, Kuva, Sarovo, Kokand, Korchakovo, Marjalan, Yusuk, Zelensk, Vanovskaya and others were open. In 1905 second Chernyevo line, Andijan is open for 2, and in 1913-1916 the railroad was held on to the outskirts of the Andijan county, the city of Jalalabad. Further, the Samarkand-Andijan and Caspian railroads were transformed to the average and Asian railroad. After construction of the railroad of the city of the Fergana Valley and the vicinity began to develop and grow in high gear. Construction of the large plants and factories began, mining increased, the processed cotton processing products in large volumes began to be on sale and taken out to other regions. Construction of new European city quarters took place in Andijan, the new city, and Zelensk, near the Asaki station, and also in suburban settlements the Russian village, to the south of Andijan, Moscow, to the west of Andijan, Pokrovsk, to the east of Andijan, Vygorodsko, the northeast of Andijan, and Topolino, the east of Andijan. In 1902 in Andijan there was the largest earthquake in the history of the Fergana Valley, at which more than 4,000 people died. In the Andijan county and partially in the Marjalan county about 4,000 buildings were destroyed. The earthquake was such force that people couldn't keep standing. After that, Andijan lost ancient architectural monuments and constructions with centuries-old history. Only state and inhabited constructions from a burned brick in a new part of the city survived. The building of the railway station Andijan, city meetings of officers, temples of Saints Sergei Radonitsky and Nicholas the Wonderworker, St. George's the Victorious' chapel at the Garden Cemetery. In the old town remained, and the highest wasn't destroyed by an earthquake 600-year-old. For the time. In the Fergana Valley, a 32-meter minaret of the 13th century of the main Friday Mosque of Andijan. Also the main mosque of the city survived, the biggest madrasa of Daimi in the Fergana Valley, which is the most beautiful architectural construction of Andijan, and all memorial historical Daimi complex now in collapse. At national and territorial delimitation in Central Asia, Andijan was a part of the Uzbekistan, having become the administrative center of the Andijan region. During the Soviet period, Andijan was the large city of the USSR, in which more than 50 educational institutions, the universities, institutes, technical schools and schools, functioned. The main part of the population of the Andijan, Fergana, Namangan, Ash, Jalalabad and Leninabad regions studied in Andijan. In the city about 100 industrial enterprises, the plants, factories and plants, worked. The population of Andijan increased more than by 3 times and was a third of 1 million people. The Andijan region on population density took the first place in the USSR and the third in the world. Pendular migration was promoted by dense population and the small size of the Andijan region. It was the smallest area by the size in the former Soviet Union, -4,200 km. And now she occupies 1% of the area of the country, but at the same time on her 10% of the population of the Republic of Uzbekistan live. At night in the city there were Kurd inhabitants, and gathered for work, and for about Kurd people in the afternoon. For the above stated reasons, the pendular migration inherent more in megalopolises was formed. Also in the former Soviet Union in the Central Asian region there was an agglomeration, Andijan, Osh. The distance between the cities in 40 km was built compactly up. In days of independence of Uzbekistan, Andijan with suburbs, agglomeration with population of Kurd people, were built almost up anew. It occurs thanks to the existing presidential program, which main goal is an improvement of quality of life of the population. She was begun by the first president of the Republic of Uzbekistan, A. Karimov, and precedes the newly elected President Shens M. Mirziyoyev now. Besides, historical constructions of century prescription were kept and restored. There were new well-planned quarters of the city with east collar and with new constructions in the western style. The old streets, which turned into wide avenues, are expanded and reconstructed. In the city appeared new 6-8 band highways and also modern 5-6-story buildings. The square of the city increased from 70 km up to 120 km. City borders continuous building reached the embankment of the main river of Andijan in the north, Karadaria. Green Bridge, Agricultural Institute. In the southeast, residential districts of the inhabited Bogashamul array. To National Park of a name of the great Commander Z. Baber. In the west to the satellite town of Yusuk, the former Leninsk, which is the main town and the homeland of automotive industry of Uzbekistan now. In 2005 in Andijan there were large-scale disorders of the minding Islam Karimov's regime, in which 187 people only, according to official figures, died. Geography is an east part of the Fergana Valley near the Uzbek-Kyrgyz border, at the height of 490 meters above sea level, on ancient deposits of the river Andijan, in 260 km to the southeast from Tashkent. 360 km on the road. and 40 km to the northwest from Osh. Climate of Andijan, subtropical midland. Fertile soils, abundance of heat and light, the long Bezmarazni period. About 210 days in a year. Favor to cultivation in the neighborhood of the city of thermophilic cultures, a cotton, a mulberry, citrus fruit and other subtropical crops. Andijan is surrounded with the foothills of Pamir and Tian Shan, which during the summer period are covered with snow tops, and in lower reaches are shrouded in forest groves of walnut and coniferous forests. Winter usually soft and short. Winds are weaker than in the western parts of the valley, on average than 5 m/s, and the average annual amount of precipitation makes 232 m a year. The summer is rather less hot than in Central Asia. Channels and rivers. Andijan Channel, which crosses Andijan from the southeast on the northwest. City extent of the channel -20 km with a width of course from 5 to 10 meters. 2 rowing channels in the northwest of the suburb of Andijan. According to the new general plan, they didn't enter city boundaries. Are parallel and have extent about 2. It came with a width of 35-45 meters. The place of trainings and classes in rowing and rowing on kayaks and a canoe. The river Karadarya flows from the northeast on the northwest of Andijan and its suburbs in 3-5 km from city borders. Extend near the suburb -30 km to the south of Paktabad and to the north of Ultinkal. Course width from 150 meters near Green Bridge up to 300-400 meters in places where the course spreads. In spite of the fact that in some places the river is adjoined by city quarters of the suburb of Andijan. The big 4-story residential district irrigator and buildings of Agricultural Institute, and in city borders the embankment wasn't included into the new master plan of Andijan. It is accepted and approved in 2017. Unlike other regional centers where there is a proximity of the big rivers. Vegetation of Andijan is various and rich. This city is decorated by exotic, decorative, subtropical, fruit, citrus fruit, nut, coniferous and deciduous crops of trees and bushes. Floriculture and crop production is widely developed. And the city and forest nursery of Schneider and the botanical garden, arboretum, for 100 years the plants collected from all continents and the plants included in the red list of Uzbekistan and the Assar grew. In days of independence of Uzbekistan, the great value began to be attached to disembarkation of exotic and subtropical cultures to replace all the year-round littering plane tree. On city streets, the areas, avenues and near office buildings began to land. Exotic palm trees. Fortuna. Palm-like. Decorative trees. A Japanese sophora, a yellow and red oriental cherry, a white and pink acacia, a white and black mulberry, an Osage apple, Adam's apple. Fruits are similar to big oranges, only green color and are inedible. Deciduous trees. Carob tree, tulip tree, Karelian birch, hornbeam ordinary, ash tree, Canadian maple, black corpulent poplar. Weeping willows, linden, alder, elm and many others. Coniferous breeds for many decades well got accustomed in Andijan, and for the last 25 years coniferous and fir trees became very popular in the city. Especially a fir tree ordinary and blue, arch, a juniper, a fir, a cypress, a pine and a cedar. Also in Andijan chestnuts and walnuts land now, almonds, pistachios, persimmon, a dida, a nab, garnet trees, a wine tree, a yellow and black fig. Laurels and various fruit trees grow in the yards. In recent years in the city and suburbs much began to grow up a kiwi. Suburbs of Andijan, especially the foothills, are rich with the fir and archery woods, sea buckthorn groves, and in the east of the area, the woods of walnut. The nature hadn't a rest when it created in this land of plenty beautiful corners, including subtropical alpine meadows of high uplands. Hills and Adira in springtime get a red color from wild growing poppies and tulips. Andijan, the fourth most populated city of the country. As of January 1, 2020, the population was 441,700 inhabitants. Before the collapse of the USSR, representatives of 120 nationalities which made more than 75% of the population of Andijan that by right can call it the city of international friendship lived in the city. In percentage expression the most part was made. Russians, Ukrainians, Belarusians, Tatars, Bashkirs, Jews, Armenians, Georgians, Koreans, Germans, Poles, Greeks, Moldavians, Roma, Kyrgyz and many others. The population of the city after the collapse of the USSR is generally made by Uzbeks. 69%. Also live Russians, Kyrgyz, Armenians, Ukrainians, Belarusians, Roma, Tatars, Koreans, Tajiks, Jews, Uyghurs, Bashkirs, Greeks, Persians, Moldavians, Georgians and others. Economy. Andijan is the largest industrial research, education, tourist and cultural and transport center of all Fergana Valley. In days of independence of Uzbekistan, the economy of Andijan and the Andijan region, mainly, develops thanks to automotive industry. In the suburb of Andijan, in the satellite town of Usik, the M plant on release of cars and minibuses functions. The plants on release of component parts are constructed. Also the oil extracting industries with the operating oil fields are highly developed. Gazo, Andijan Nefteprim, Yushni Almalishik, Hotabatsky and many others. Spect Andijan Petrotrust Design Office is engaged in development of this industry. Transport. Now after reconstruction the Andijan airport received the status of international. The runway is reconstructed and prolonged up to 300 meters. Andijan is connected by through air traffic to Tashkent, Moscow, Domodedovo, Sergei Novosibirsk, Tolmachevo, Omsk Street, Petersburg, Polkovo, Krasnoyarsk, Yemelinovo, Tyumen, Rozhchino, and other cities according to commercial demand. The airport of Andijan is located within the city, has bus traffic and also sharing round-the-clock taxis. The decree of the President of Uzbekistan of June 19, 2020 to the international airport Andijan appropriated a name of Baber. In the city there are two railway stations, Andijan I and Andijan II. There are two railway stations, Andijan Northern and Andijan Yushni. Andijan is the large railway junction of Central Asia. He includes 4 directions: Marjalan/Fergana, Namangan, Southern Kyrgyz, Uch/Jalalabad, and Tashkamirskoye. More than 100 years Andijan was the final passenger destination of trains. Here arrived and from here trains to Moscow, to 3 in day, Tashkent, to 3 in day, Samorat, Tomsk, Saratov, Ufa, Dushanbe and other cities went. Now to the city from Tashkent, through the pass. The electrified railroad is brought into operation that returned to Andijan the status of the large railway center. In the nearest future high-speed suburban electric trains which will connect Andijan, Fergana, Marjalan and Kokand by through traffic are started. Time and way from Andijan will be reduced to Kokand by 3 times, till 1 o'clock. And from the regional center of Fergana to the regional center of Andijan it will be possible to reach in 30 minutes. Within the city the central bus station of Andijan bus station are located. Street Desayski, the Old City, Knitting Factory, the Belk Road, the West, the Belk Road, the Southwest. The central bus station connects Andijan not only with the cities of Uzbekistan, but also with the cities of other countries. Andijan Trolleybus I existed from 1970 to 2002, and the extent of the trolleybus line was 70 km. Cableway now operates on the southeast of Andijan. Extent of the line is about 200 meters. She has 3 stations, lower, intermediate, and top. The area of the Andijan Television and Broadcasting Center. Also the second cableway in the Andijan region functions. In the settlement of Topolino, around a dam of the Andijan Sea. Tourism. Hotels of Andijan are presented on comfortableness from 2 to 5 stars, on architecture unite 3 eras of construction. The first period is 2 hotels of pre-revolutionary time, Andijan Hotel in the center of the new city opposite to the square, and the Valley/Road Hotel 4 stars is placed in the building of the former nobility assembly of the city, is opposite to the first railway station. The building in 2006 was redesigned by the Russian Uzbek architects, built on by the 3rd floor and on appearance began to remind Moscow Metropole. Decorate square Constitution of Mr. Andijan includes the bowling center and the big pool. Hotels of an era of the Soviet Union are a 4-storied hotel, Andijan, 3 stars. In the Old Town Center and the 5-floor and tourist hotel, Gold Dolina, 3 stars. The 3rd hotel, Sport -1, and the 4th 7-story hotel. Unfinished construction. Was completed in days of independence of Uzbekistan. The 3rd era of hotel economy are the present in days of independence of Uzbekistan in the city of Andijan 4 4-star hotels and new 5-star hotel in the center of the new city of Bagashamal overlooking the main children's park of A.S. Pushkin were for the first time constructed, by right and occupy the hallmark of Andijan, reminds the beautiful fantastic palace with east color and the western refinement. Sport. Andijan is the homeland of female field hockey in the USSR. The women's team on field hockey of Andijan, Spartak, repeatedly became the champion of the USR and the owner of the European Cup. The USR national team competing at the Olympic Games in Moscow have consisted of players of Andijan. For merits of hockey players, Andijan received the right for construction of hockey stadium of Friendship of the People of the USR with an artificial lawn from the government of the USR and the Uzbekistan. At the time there were only two such stadiums, in Moscow and Leningrad. The stadium is designed for 1,200 viewers and according to hockey standards is large. On the sports arena, Andijan and the men's national team on field hockey star trained. In 1964 in Andijan the football club, Spartak, which is nowadays acting in the Super League of Uzbekistan under the name of FE Andijan, was created. Now in the area about 30 stadiums, 70 sports schools for children and youth, 65 tennis courts and 4,200 other sports constructions function. From pupils of sports schools of Andijan on track and field athletics, Svetlana Almasova became the champion of Europe and the winner of the World Cup, and Zamira Zaitseva, the world record holder. The Andijan Boxing School, one of the strongest in Uzbekistan. Her pupils Ruslan Chagayev, Kakraman Orzekulov and Felix Pak were champions of Europe. Nakamat Kadir Abdulov, the world champion, and Utkurbek Haydarov, the threefold champion of Uzbekistan and the world champion. And from Dynamo Club Andijan, the Sambo wrestler, the prize winner of the championships of the USR, the champion of Europe, the master of sports of the USR of the international class. Medicine and healthcare. The city of Andijan contains a large number of medical institutions, hospitals, polyclinics and clinics. Medical services appear to all inhabitants of the Fergana Valley. In the city of Andijan in 1955, the Andijan State Medical Institute of M. 1. Kalanin. Idmi. Which was one of the leading highest medical institutions of Uzbekistan, was open. The teachers were initially created from doctors and candidates of medical sciences of the leading institutes of Moscow, Leningrad, Tashkent and other cities, which passed on further experience to students of IDMI. On the basis of Institute IDMI clinics on 700 beds and regional clinical hospital on 500 beds serving inhabitants of the Fergana Valley were organized. During independence of Uzbekistan in the city, a large number of the state and private clinics opened. Republican, regional hospitals, centers and medical institutions. Regional clinics and sanatorium institutions. City hospitals and hospital institutions. City polyclinics. Include central to the isthmus, 8 adults and 8 nurseries. Private polyclinics and centers. Also far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.